According to Luigi Peretti, Phoenicians were the agents of Assyrians, Babylonian merchant ships in the eastern Mediterranean. Their ships were made of strong tree stems and were called goloi. Goloi. The diagram of a Phoenician ship are recovered from Assyrian relics and shows a keel and a high deck with a middle plank and a carved prow. Before Christ, that is in 650 BC, the warships of Phoenicians, which were called triremes, roamed about the Arabian Sea and also in the western waters. They were three-storied structures in which 200 to 250 people could travel. There were 60 to 70 oarsmen had to carry the ship along, and it was about 110 to 120 feet long, 17 feet wide. Triremes, this description is important. Triremes were seen during daytime, not in night, in calm waters and always near the shores. They were not attacking vessels but were concerned with the defense of the coastal areas. This description is interesting because these are warships for defense only and are seen only in daytime and only near the shore in the Arabian Sea. Means Phoenician warships were protecting their shores in and around the place, that is Indian, Arabian and African shores, and had their protection. Defense of Indian shore by a Phoenician ship itself gives us a clue to the origin of the Phoenicians. Phoenicians navigated their ships and vessels depending upon the position of the Great Bear. Tales of Meletus, who believed that the earth is flat as a mat, is credited by the Western historians as the first man to have predicted a solar eclipse. He predicted an eclipse to happen on 28th May BC 585. But he didn't know that the earth and sun are not flat but spherical objects. Then, without knowing this basic fact, if he had predicted an eclipse, there must be something fishy in it, don't you think so? Without knowing that the shape of the earth, sun, moon, they are spherical objects. Without that, how can a person predict eclipse? But no one has ever thought about that. It was the Phoenician travelers and astronomers who had information about the shape of the earth and the sun and of the movement of the heavenly bodies and the climatic changes brought about by such movements, who passed on this information to them. And he might have announced this new piece of knowledge. And when it became true, people credited him with the new knowledge. This is not an impossibility in academic spheres. Taking or borrowing something from others and showing it across as it is one's own. It is usual in academic field. So Tales of Meletus are actually done like that. Goloi, the name of the boat of Phoenician, is derived from the word golem, or a round spherical body. It is from that goloi. Goloi is the name of the ship, and golem is the round spherical earth, which is the shape of the earth. In Prakrit languages in India, the golem is called a column or even a column, and even sometimes a kalam. The Goladri, that is the mountain of the earth, becomes Kolatri and Kolatiri, the title of the king of Kerala. And golem becomes its replica according to mathematical terms drawn as a column, a mandala, and also the year or unit of time as kalam. Kalam or marakkalam, a wooden boat, a wooden ship. Kalam is a wooden ship. Marakkalam is still used in Tamil speaking areas. Marakkan is the one who makes ships with wood. Maram is wood. Marakkan is the one who makes marakkalam, ships with wood, and then takes it to the sea in the western coast of Kerala. Now, the traditional shipbuilders of Kerala were Phoenicians who built the goloi, the kalam, the marakkalam, and even now this tradition continues. And even now, those people are called Maraccans, but they think that Maraccan is a later addition in 13th century Calicut. It is not so. The timber shipbuilding, the wooden shipbuilding in the neighboring Bepur and etc., the Kalai people, they are actually the actual descendants of the Phoenicians who converted into another religion. They are actually Indians themselves. In India, the oldest scripture that speaks of the navigation of Indians is Rig Veda. Remember that, Rig Veda. And there are many passages that praise the Aswins and their ships. Their ships are also called the Triratha. It is from this Triratha the word trireme of the Phoenician has originated. The Aswins are twins, and they are depicted as two serpents twining around each other, as in the symbol of medicine, astronomy, and navigation. They are experts in that. They are scholars in every art and science of the Indian land. Let us consider a few passages in the Veda in which the Ashwins are invoked. He who knows the path of the birds flying in the sky, beings of the ocean, knows also the path of the sailing vessels, having taken the vow and possessing progeny to protect. He knows the 12 months and also the period that comes next to them. He knows the lovely and mighty path of the wind or Vayu, who lies extended, and then knows the people who live beyond that even. This description fits well with the migratory birds, the fishes, especially the whale migration, which moves according to the seasons and ocean currents, and the monsoon winds and its behavior, and how one knows these can go beyond and meet people of far off countries. This principle of navigation through their sea chariots called Triratha was belonging to the great twin serpents Aswins and their races. And these people are the Phoenicians, which later known as Phoenicians and their triremes. So it is so easy to trace this to the Vedas. Then another hymn says, "O Ashwins, your chariots evenly opt does not perish. It takes you over the sea. You have installed one wheel of your car on top of the indestructible. The other goes on the firmament." Then it says, "There are three are the stout wheels of your chariot that is filled with honey. Three are the columns placed for support. O Ashwins, come thrice with the seven mother rivers. O Ashwins, devoid of untruth, always truthful, where are the three wheels of your tripod car? Where are the three riggings and props? Where are the mighty mules to be harnessed? O Ashwins, harness your car and come along and convey our praises like to a ship that carries us over the sea. Ashwins, bearers of riches, you brought abundance to Sudas in your car." Sudas is a ancient king. Ushas, the goddess, agitates the car as usual, those which are harnessed at her coming, just as ships are sent out to sea by those who are desirous of making wealth. These verses, addressed by Rishi Kakshivan, contains many feats performed by the Ashwins. They carried the young bride, daughter of Purumitra, in their ship, outstripping a rival army, and gave her in marriage to Vimada. Then, when Turga went out, or Turga sent out Bujju to the sea, as a dying man abandons his riches, the Ashwins bore him up in life, giving him boats which flew through the firmament and kept above water. They carried him for 3 nights and 3 days in three rapidly revolving ships, drawn by 6 horses and running on 100 wheels along the seashore and by the dry beach. Buji was brought home in a boat of 100 oars over an endless ocean which was tossing and turning with waves and with nothing to cling on for safety. Ashwins gave a white horse to Akashwa and Pedu, and This host brings constant success. They bestowed boundless intelligence to Kachivan, and from the hoof of their mighty steed filled 100 pots with soma. Atri was extricated from a dark cavern, and the hot flames around him were extinguished by the snow of Ashwins. They gave him nutrients to survive. For the thirsty Gaudamas, Ashwin dig a well. For Chavana, they gave back his youth by rejuvenation, Vajikaranam. Dadyaj was given life by transplanting a horse head. In return, Dadyaj taught them the mystic sciences. A lady called Vathumadi didn't have children. Ashwins treated her and gave her a son, Hiranya Hasta. They gave Kavi the power to see. Vishpala was given an iron leg so that she could dance with the other girls. She was later given to sage Agastya. Rijrashva was given a pair of transplanted eyes. When Ashwins reached the house of Divodasa, the king of Benares, for the sake of the Bharadwajas of the west coast, they carried treasures in their cars. And at that time, Rishabha, that is Taurus, and Shinshumara were harnessed together in heaven. Reba, laying in a well for 10 nights and 9 days, was rescued by them, just like Joseph in the Bible. Through their intervention, the deaf could hear, blind could see, the maimed could walk, and the infertile could become fertile. They taught how to sow barley by using a plough at the request of Manu. Thus, they represent the first medical and surgical people, the first to begin agriculture with a plough, the first navigators of the sea, and the first scientists and artists who protected the human race with knowledge. As the first shipbuilders and explorers of the universe, these serpent twins, or Phaneeswaras called Phoenicians, were the protectors of humanity and its culture, and the first globalization of knowledge started with them. Their vehicles were swift and moved with speed of wind and the speed of mind, and travel over sea became very easy. It is surmounted with 3 columns and hence called Triratha. It was lovely and it had 3 V's, or it had 3 corners, a triangular one. The Ashwins filled the cows, made horses active, and augmented the virile progeny of mankind. They were learned in all sciences and arts: agriculture, Ayurveda, astronomy, coinage, invention of wheel, the alphabet. Brahmi is their alphabet, Phoenicians' alphabet, navigation and trade and whatnot. And Rishabha, Nandi, the vehicle of Shiva, and Shimshumara, the Matsya form of Vishnu, the cosmic form, are harnessed together in heaven for destruction and protection of the creation, making a Shiva Vishnu Shankaranarayana union. Now, if you look into the pictures, these pictures are also the trireme are available, and on the net you can see that. And in one of it, you can actually see uh, the crew with a side knot of hair on one side, the Phoenician crew with a side knot, Kuduma, on one side. You can see that. It shows the origin from South India, Kerala. No? Triremes were ancient war galleys of Phoenicians and were best known from the fleets of ancient Greece. But the date of introduction of trireme into Greece, you cannot say, because from the Vedic times these were traveling in the oceans. Vedic India, they were traveling. There are ambiguities in the few scattered mentions of triremes by Herodotus and Thucydides, and the evolutionary development of the ship is not well understood by Greek writers. That means they were not aware of its construction. As I said, till Thomas, St. Thomas came to Kerala, the wooden building of boats and ships were not known to the not even to the Israelis. So Thucydides thought the trireme was introduced by Aminoclus of Corinth, in the late 8th century BC. However, we also know that triremes were not truly effectively used in naval combat until 525 BC, when, according to Herodotus, Polycrates of Samos was able to contribute 40 triremes to a joint invasion of Egypt. It was the first time it was used. No improvements were made to the design of the trireme, as the 40 ships contributed by Polycrates were still relatively primitive. Some historians argue, therefore, that the introduction of the trireme did not take place until during the reign of Polycrates of Samos, as he was known to have a fleet of penteconters at the beginning of his rule, and yet had switched to triremes by 525 BC. Herodotus mentions that the Egyptian pharaoh Necho in 6100 to 595 BC built triremes on the Nile for service in the Mediterranean and in the Red Sea for service in the Indian Ocean. That pharaoh had close ties with Greece, and especially with Corinth, where it is likely, if the Corinthians had indeed introduced the ship in the late 8th century BC, he acquired that design, according to many historians. But they forget the Indian Ocean and the Indian connection of the Egyptian rulers from at least a period of the Hyksos. There had been the connection. Triremes had to be made stable. They, the set period is 2 centuries before Archimedes' investigation of the physics of buoyancy and ship stability. To ensure stability means to impose severe limits on their possible heights. The lowest row of oarsmen were only half a meter or so above waterline. Their oars stuck through portholes with leather gaskets round portholes to keep the water out. The top row of oars rested on an outrigger that stuck out from the hull by about 60 centimeters. The rowers were packed very tightly, the lower ones with their noses pressed into the bottoms of the men above and in front of them, an uncomfortable position commented on by Aristophanes. In Athenian trireme was about 35 meters long, with a beam around 5 meters. It had a complement of 170 oarsmen and a captain, 20 crew, and 10 marines. On each side of the vessel, there were 31 Thramites, top row, with oars about 4 meters long, 27 Sygites, that is the middle row, with oars about 3 meters long, and 27 Thalamites, lower row, with oars 2 meters long. So the row and the size of the oar are proportionate. The captain of a trireme was called a trirarch. The blades of the oars came within 30 centimeters of each other, making the trireme very difficult to row without clashing. The two main ramming tactics were attempting to catch the enemy in the flank and attempting to glide along, slide with oars pulled in, thereby snapping the other boat's oars and leaving it immobilized. These difficult maneuvers required a great deal of skill and concentration from the rowers. The single inexpert rower could throw the whole crew off their stroke. Trireme crew had to train hard and long and were not slaves, but recruited from free citizens who have proven records of efficiency. They were paid well. Slaves drafted to the galleys in emergency situations were freed first. Thus, the crew had a stake in the survival of their city-state and its ruler and trade relations, and had to be given practice rigorously, drilled to be reliable in combat and honest to the cause. The 3 rows of oarsmen meant that triremes did not sit especially low in the water, and so were fairly prone to tipping, especially in a rough sea. They were equipped with sails, which were taken down before battles. But cramped conditions made them unsuited for long distance travel unless nearby soil was present to camp upon each night, especially since they did not usually carry a supply of fresh water with them. Sometimes they and other galleys were used to haul cargo, but relatively stable round ships were more often employed. Since tarring was not known to antiquity, the ships would become soaked the longer they stayed in water. And consequently, the trireme would ride lower and become much more difficult to propel and maneuver. It was therefore essential to keep the ships out of water whenever possible so that the wood would dry. This was done by beaching when on expedition and by hauling triremes up covered stone rams, the neozoikoi, when in harbor. Many such neozoikoi or ship's houses have been found in Piraeus. According to contemporary writers, triremes were capable of top speed of 11.5 knots, that is 21 kilometers per hour, for short sprints, of accelerating to full speed in 30 seconds, of turning at top speed within their own length, and of sustained rowing at 7 knots, that is 13 kilometers per hour, for a long time. Thucydides describes an event in 427 BC during Peloponnesian War, in which a trireme was sent from Athens to Mytilene on the island of Lesbos to stop massacre taking place there. The trireme covered 345 kilometers in a little less than 24 hours. By comparison, a modern ferry makes the journey in 14 hours. Fleets of triremes employed a variety of tactics. The periplus of the Erythraean Sea. Periplos means sailing around. So periplus is not a man. Periplus of the Erythraean Sea means sailing around the Erythraean Sea, involved outflanking or encircling the enemy so as to attack them in the vulnerable rear. Dake plus, that means sailing out through, involved a concentrated charge so as to break a hole in the enemy line, allowing galleys to break through and attack the line from behind. Kuklos means a circle. Kuklos was a defensive circle employed against these tactics. In all of these maneuvers, the ability to accelerate faster, row faster, and turn more sharply than one's contestant, that's the enemy, was very important and requires a lifetime practice. The early 5th century saw a conflict between Greece and Persian Empire under Darius and Xerxes, who hired ships from their Phoenician cities. It was from the Phoenicians that they borrowed. Why did these kings hire their warships from Phoenician cities? Why did they allow the Phoenicians to have a city in their empire? Because only the Phoenicians could build warships or any ship for them, and only they knew the sea route to their native land, which they kept a secret, and only through them they could get the spices and gold from the ancient land of India. Since Persians had common descent from Atlanteans and the Indians, they were actually cousins, and it is the knowledge of warfare, trade, shipbuilding, and sea route, and the honesty in weights and measures, which was the special quality of the Harappan Indian traders, which made the Phoenicians acceptable to all people around the world. The ship of the Aswins also is drawn to land like the warships of Homer's time. Their ship could navigate along the open seas as well, as shown in the story of the Biju in Veda. The anchor of the ship was simple heavy stone for both. Recently, when Dwaraka, the port city of Sri Krishna, was excavated, such stones were excavated, showing that there was a port in Dwaraka as early as 3000 BC, and ships were used for war and commerce, as mentioned in the Rig Veda. Another linguistic evidence, apart from the word trireme in Triratha, is that a duct variety of Pentacontaurus was called cataphracta by the Phoenicians, and this simulates the word catamaran of the seafaring Tamilians of South India, the direct descendants of Phoenicians. In South India, the Maraccans, who use catamaran, have both round ships, that is the strogola of the Phoenician, which is a type of goloi or spherical thing, and also long ship called makara, means pentagon for South India, pentacontaurus for Phoenician. The Byremes were terms introduced by Erythraeans. It is from these words Tyre and Pyrrhus originated by wrong pronunciation. Pyre and Byreme are from the Indian word meaning 2 foot. When the increase in the number of rows, it increased the momentum. But to reduce the extra size and weight, it is better to reduce the royals and to keep them one above the other. That will raise the center of gravity and threaten the stability. The solution is that the royals should be minimum and they should be selected on the basis of their training. They should have a well synchronized movement, which requires very special training, just like the kalari and the rowing techniques and the rendering of music and mantra practiced in India. The number of people doing the same thing synchronously is a practice taught rigorously in this part of the world, whether it is martial art, whether it is music, or any other thing. As a part of training, young men will exhibit their valor in what is called Vallam Kali, where synchronous rowing and propellation of a vessel was done, and the people, along with the king and the supervisors, comprising 500 eminent men, and the great Naval Chief, he is called the Perimpadagu Muttarayan, will watch the play or the Abhyas. Now, the feat has survived in Kerala as a part of a celebration of Onam festival and for tourist attraction. But initially, it was not just a celebration and not for tourist attraction also. The rowing technique was guessed only in 19th century by people of the Western world. To make a hole in the enemy ship below waterline, this training and synchronicity was essential. There was a chief to select the team of such warriors for the king of South India called the Perumal. And this man called Perimpidagu Muttarayan. Perum means big, Padagu means ship. Muttu is the name of the sea goddess and of the sea pearl. Arayan means the one who traversed the sea for the sake of dharma. Arai is dharma, from which Araya is derived. Arya also is a term derived from this Ara, dharma, Araya. So they are not people from outside. The Aryas are here only. These Aryas only. There were two dharmas for such chieftains. One was the Samaya Tantra for trading and commerce and peace. The other was the Kaula Tantra for defense and war. The Samaya and goloi are terms derived from this. The Corinthian Amenocles made the first trireme according to Western historians, but his vessel was built only in 440 BC, and its speed was controlled by shape, length, weight, rollers, friction, and waved rag, and it could travel only 14 knots in the most favorable conditions. And he didn't have the knowledge of hydraulics or of the Archimedes law. Whereas Indians were adepts in these laws, as Sanskrit texts and their yantras show. According to Demosthenes, the shipbuilding of Themistocles was supervised by a senate of 500 in Tamil speaking areas, including ancient Kerala. They are called Annur. Annur means 500. A guild of 500 great merchants. But actual shipbuilding and business was entrusted with a committee called Triremes. The warships of the Aswins were actually part of the army of the emperor to carry troops, both men and horse. The custom survived in Greek warships in the names of Plitagogos for warriors and Ippagagos for oars. The ships, when they spread out a wide sail and contained only minimum crew, it was meant for cargo and commerce. Such ships followed the southwest monsoon winds and reached the other shores without any hindrance. And this was known only to the people of India and Southeast Asia. When the sail was removed and had a number of crew warriors and a brass prow to make holes in enemy's ship, the ship can travel only along the sea coast and were used for defense. They never used it for aggression. Both were used by Aswins and Phoenicians because they were the same people from India. The merchant class of India traveled with the southwest and northwest monsoon clocks all over the world and traded with the global community of antiquity and spread their ideas far and wide. But at the same time, they were careful not to let the outside world know the trade secret of the monsoon winds. Winds were their trade winds. They had roaming warships along the sea coast, which were the terror of Westerners, who could only reach up to the Arabian coast for exchange of their wealth. Why so? Because I had already mentioned Arabians were the friends and relatives of Indians, who were the Apirs of the Yadava race. Hyksos, being the descendants of Ikshvaku race of India, were also allowed to come to India because they were also kith and kin. It was the patriotism of the Perimpidagu Muttaragan and his carefully selected crew which kept the secret for such a long period of millennias, and hence he had a special place in all the king's affairs. The Aswins of the Vedas are ascribed special high place in the sacrificial rites of the Veda. Even though they have gone abroad, they were not considered untouchables or mechas, and were allowed to enter the sacrificial hall in all pomp and splendor. These people were not foreigners, but natives who had gone abroad. They were really intelligent scholars who knew the healing art and commerce and trade routes and were important for the economy, education, and defense of the land. The naval chief, the Perumpadagamuttaraya, is even now venerated by the king of Cochin, the ancient Perumal, during the Attachamayam, that is the Onam festival annually. Just now we are now having the Onam, no? Attachamayam. Even now it is being done. Though there is no royal family, there are no naval chiefs for the royal family, yet the custom is followed. And the significance is historical. If you consider that it just as a custom or ritual and remove it, a part of history we are just removing. So keep the traditions as history. In Dhanushkodi, which was an old port of Tamilians, we can still see a place called Muhuntrayar Satram or Chattiram, showing a control of the Arayar or Aryas or Arayar, who were not invaders but nobles, rich and cultured in the country. When was the loyalty of the Perimbadagu Muttaragan lost? But that is a question which carries $1,000,000, which every historian should ask and answer for himself. I am not a historian. I am just having a philosophical mind, trying to find out a solution to the riddle of a common human ancestry and an Advaita of whole human race. Hence, that part is not my duty. What were the other vessels that were trying to master the sea? That we will come to in the next episode.